Welcome everyone to Around the ACL. Michelle Thompson here with Trey Ryder and Anthony Ione, coming to you still from West Monroe, Louisiana, my hotel room. Still here, actually flying. I have a women's retreat coming up this week, so flying to North Carolina tomorrow. So looking forward to that. But still hanging out here in Louisiana. We had an awesome Open. This is Open number 10 that just finished up. We're going to talk about who needs a win, as we have only one more Open before our signature series. We're going to get into an ACL Academy clip from Anthony Ione himself, and then Overreaction Wednesday. So before we get into it, Trey, I know I saw you in the chat, so I know you caught at least some of the action this weekend. What are your overall thoughts?
No, it was great. This was a weekend where I watched, aside from Friday, I kind of jump in and out because sometimes my Fridays are busier, but I caught a lot of the action on Saturday and Sunday. So I watched I think you guys did almost 10 hours of coverage. I probably watched 8 of it. I was watching whether or not I was actually commenting or not. I kind of either had it on the background or whatever. It was a deep clean of the house weekend as I get ready to go into my travel season. My wife said, "Sit down. We are cleaning this house. Every inch of it is going to be spotless, and so that when you leave, we're good to go." So she got me the to-do list. It had 78 items on it for cleaning the house. So we got that thing spotless. So it was a lot of time spent listening to that, and just doing some things around the house before we got going. And so cornhole filled that void. So it was a great weekend.
We don't leave for like a month, Trey. Your house is going to stay that clean for a month?
Oh, well, we got some traveling to do before then and everything like that. Like my busy travel season kind of starts even this weekend. So yeah, it's picking up now.
Yeah, that makes more sense. All right, Anthony, how about you?
Yeah, I watched a ton as well. The lab, we've seen the lab in the past, is getting a remodel, so I'm swapping out the floors. I need to double it as a basketball training facility, so it's going to be handles work, plyos, a lot of strength and agility training for little guy. So I had that sucker on in the background while I was ripping up carpet, and because we're pulling carpet out, putting some hard floors down so that we can do some dribble work. So yeah, I watched a bunch. Some good matches.
Man, you guys were busy watching cornhole, like overachievers over there.
Gotta be.
What do you do?
Most people just sit on their couch. I mean, I lay on the couch and then take little 10-minute naps every once in a while. And if it's a long enough game, I'll wake up and the game's just getting to the end. I'm like, this is perfect.
And my beloved Clemson Tigers, top 10 team in the country right now. They were also on Saturday. So I literally had 2 screens and cleaning the house all at the same time. It was exactly. And then the baseball team started. I had to find a third device that I could put somewhere to watch all 3 at the same time and still be productive. So it was a lot of stimulation all over the place.
First world problems, I would say. All right, let's get into it. So our singles winner was Logan Chamberlain. Doubles was Mark Richards and Tony Smith. For women, Sarah Cassidy did the sweep, singles and doubles, with Elizabeth Tennyson. Seniors, Steve Schrader, again with another win. I think it's 3 in a row, but he got the sweep this weekend with Dan Glagowski. And juniors, we had Tony Forbes for singles and Ethan Farias and Gabriel Clausen for doubles. I asked Steve as we were loading the truck, what's going on, Steve? You're so good. You keep winning. And he's like, and I get no love on Around the ACL. So here you go, Steve. Here's all your love. And I put something in Overreaction Wednesday just to make sure Steve gets his flowers. But let's get it started with singles. What are your thoughts on singles, Trey?
Yeah, it's so funny. So I watched all of singles, and then just to see, Logan Chamberlain there at the end to get the win. It was almost a little bit surprising to me, for lack of a better term, because as I watched the entire day of singles, I can't think at any point I said to myself, I think Logan Chamberlain's going to win this thing, right? At other times I said, oh my gosh, Josh Quinn might win this thing. He just beat Mark Richards twice. Prior to Mark Richards losing, I said, I think Mark Richards might come back and win this entire thing and just put his foot down. I saw Zach Aiken listening to me on Around the ACL last week talk about how he wasn't he didn't deserve to be a top 3 player just yet. He needed to earn it. And I thought he was going to make me eat my words immediately, right? there were different names that popped up. Alex Rawls jumps back onto the scene. All of a sudden, we talked about how we hadn't really seen him play at the highest level in the past couple months. I thought at times maybe he was going to win. Shoot, I thought I was going to be able to talk to the hometown crowd about Derek Holland going out there and being a champion. At different points throughout that entire thing, I kept convincing myself that these different people were going to win. And to be honest with you, I don't think it was until the finals when I said to myself that Logan Chamberlain was going to win that event. But I think that shouldn't be an insult to Logan Chamberlain. That should be a compliment, because I think, in all things considered, in all the different people he had to play against in one of the most stacked fields of the entire year, in the most important time of the year, Logan Chamberlain came out and was steady, was focused, and guys, he didn't give up a point in the finals. That may be a little bit more to speak about Gavin Cano and not ability to have his best game at the end. But the fact remains, Logan Chamberlain went undefeated throughout this entire field and got the big win. And I think, to me, that is really impressive. And I think I'm fully ready to say, we've been hinting at it, and maybe some people are already there, but I kind of had a soft spot. I 100% now think that the A player on the Burton Jr. Chamberlain team is Logan Chamberlain. The A player is Logan Chamberlain, right? He has elevated his game beyond what JBJ has been able to throw in the past 6 months. And that's not anything to say that there needs to be a panic mode. This team was really successful when JBJ was the A, Logan was the B, and they just kind of balanced each other out. There's nothing to say that this can't be a dominant team again, kind of just with that separate dynamic. So on the singles side, it was good to see a lot of those different people. Shout out Josh Quinn, someone I get to see at the Winthrop practices every so often. He's been grinding. He's here all the time to the point where it annoys the hell out of me sometimes. But he's been throwing really, really well, and he shows that. He shows that there. I still think Mark Richards is the best player in the world, so that's even more compliment to Josh Quinn. I saw nothing this weekend from Mark Richards that takes me away from that. But people like Jamie Graham, Jacob Trzynski, Tony Smith, that group of all the players that I just talked about, those have seemed to have elevated themselves into a different tier heading into this first signature. And that may not be the group of 8-10 players that finishes the year at number one, but they will certainly, as far as singles players go, be ones that I expect to be near the top, at least for the first half of the signature season.
Yeah, we were wondering, does Mark Richards have a problem with Josh Quinn? Like, is that going to be his nemesis? Like, that's so crazy of all the people. But yeah, really impressive by him. Anthony, what are your thoughts on singles?
Yeah, singles. I mean, first off, Trey's hot take was fire, right? In 9 opens before this one, 8 different singles champions. You got Harbaugh, Trader, Richards twice, Trzynski, Gore, Soto, Smith, Aiken. All of them in the field, maybe not Harbaugh. I saw him in doubles. I don't think I saw him in singles, but you're talking about most of those guys in the field. So a scolding hot take by Trey that none of these guys would repeat. And he got it right. So if we're keeping receipts on this one, Trey nailed it. Adding a new singles champ in Logan Chamberlain. Guys, Logan Chamberlain was due for this win. He's been a top 3 in bracket 5 times, made the bracket final 3 times, won his bracket at open number 8. So he was tuned up for this one, and does it through the king seat, taking it away from Jamie Graham. And Jamie Graham was absolutely cooking going into that match. Graham's confidence was at max going through Jeremiah Ellis. He went through Chris Roybal, Bryce Forbes, and then Tony Smith, but it didn't matter. Chamberlain holding him to single-digit points for the king seat. Then Jamie Graham makes his way back to Chamberlain after a 22-2 win over Tony Smith, who was also cooking in the bracket. That Chamberlain versus Graham final was super close, 17-16 at one point, and it was kind of off the stream court. So we only got bits and pieces of what was going on live. Guys, it was crazy intense over there from what I could see. A lot of shit talking was flowing. An official was called over. If you missed it, I ended up going back and getting the details from Michael Gonzalez, who was the official called over to that one. He said before he even got called over to the match, the spectators were saying, hey, we think you're going to need to come over and officiate this one. But it wasn't until Jamie called him over officially before he started, getting in on that. And it was after an intense situation. And it kind of went something like this. Jamie Graham called a timeout. And during that timeout, Logan left the box. He started hanging out with the spectators, allegedly leveling up his shit, talking about Graham directly to the crowd. So Graham said, hey, he waited the 60 seconds. Logan didn't return to the box. Logan was actually on the other side of the court also. So Jamie decides to throw the bag. So with Chamberlain outside the box on the other side of the court during this timeout, Jamie wanted a penalty enforced. So Michael comes over and says, hey, there's no way to officially get the time on that. But now that I'm in play, we're going to have this round play out. So the rest of the match was officiated. At one point in the round, Logan ended up having a bag kind of dripping over the hole. And Michael said it clearly stopped moving. So Jamie said, hey, can you remove the bag? Jamie's putting the score in. He's on scoreboard. Logan didn't accommodate the request. He wanted to sit there and leave that thing as long as possible to see if anything crazy would happen. So Jamie does it himself. He reaches down, he flicks his bag out of the hole and chucks it on the floor. That's kind of the mode that was going on right now in that match. And then from that point forward, it was kind of this facetious thing, like congratulating each other on every miss. But it was ultimately Chamberlain that gets the bracket win 22-16 and goes on to win the whole thing. Meesh, you were live. Did you get anything from where you were at perspective-wise and what was going on in that match?
I mean, it just looked spicy over there. I mean, I'll say that. Like, we were a good distance away, so it's like we could only when they put the camera on it. But it was animated. There was a lot going on, and it's definitely. We said new rivalry ?
Yeah, no doubt.
Logan is.
Yeah, just to finish up, Trey, just a couple more things. Mark Richards, yeah, you said it looked good again. Nothing changes for me. He was just shy of 10-5 throughout the tournament. Could have been the difference late in matches when you're just shy at 10-5. Good call on Richards in your top 10 that you did last week going into the signature series. Guys, Derek Holland's roll bag was nice. It was effective. It was a value-add shot selection. To me, that was the difference in him winning matches. Then he paired it with an airmail that was just absolutely ridiculous. He hit so many tough airmails. Trzynski, another strong run. This kid is so good and living up to the hype. Gavin Cano played like the top 5 guy I've been talking about. He was 300ths away from a 10-1. I mean, we talk about a 10-5 being good. He was just shy of the 1 on the DPR side, absolutely crushing his opponents. I'm proud of that kid because I know what he's capable of. I think he can still finish top 1 at some point in his career. Same for Alex Rawls, right? He's kind of been off radar a little bit. He comes in. I also think that he's a guy that could finish top 1 in his career at some point. And then, Trey, you did mention Josh Quinn knocked Richards down, knocked Richards out. That bracket final was close, 21-19. These Winthrop kids, you've got Jackson Remick, Gavin Hammond. We got Luke Bryant, a couple others. Trey, do you know who the toughest dude is in that squad? I mean, who's the guy? Who's the man in the Winthrop squad?
Oh gosh, they're gonna clip this and put this out of my office and show this to me when I make a decision here. Look, they have a lot of back and forth. I think when they first arrived, it was no doubt that Gavin and Jackson were the guys, but that's kind of changed a little bit. I mean, they're still the leaders, and Gavin is the captain of that team, so that there's no question about that there. But as far as the top talent goes, I really do believe Josh Quinn and Luke Bryant are kind of emerging as the number 1 and number 2 right now on that team.
Wow.
And I think Josh is becoming closer to being that number 1. Luke still has a couple more up and downs. I actually think Jackson Remick can be a little bit more consistent than Luke Bryant. And so sometimes that is going to put Jackson ahead. But those two certainly skill-wise are pushing towards the top on that team.
Nice.
All right, let's go into doubles. We'll start with you, Trey.
All right. Mark Richards, Tony Smith. What else is there to say? And I have a new theory that I've been waiting, and I almost put it in the chat, okay, and on the live feed, but it started to make sense to me when they kept winning, and I was watching the dynamic, and Mark Richards wasn't playing as well. And it wasn't as if he was bad, but he was, instead of his 10 out of 10 self, he was a 7.5, 8 out of 10. And I said to myself, why are they playing so good when Mark is not his perfect self. And then I started thinking about it, and someone started talking about bag selection. And then the bag selection that they're using more of Tony's bags, which are a little bit slower for Mark. Mark prefers a faster bag. And the next day, Mark comes out there and is the most dominant player in the world in singles using his own bags. Why not use the same thing? And then it clicked for me, okay? And I know this isn't on purpose, but I think this is actually what's happening. I believe that Tony Smith, in order for him to be the best doubles player in the world, the best player in the world in a doubles game, he's got to be the A player. Tony Smith cannot be a B player, because if his mentality is that my partner is better than me, then I no longer have this subconscious confidence that I cannot be beaten by anything. However, if I take the best player in the world and I put a bag in their hand in which they are not the best player in the world, that means I am. And I can be the dominating force that leads this team. I believe the chemistry between Richards and Smith is elite, because it actually, the bag selection combined with the mentality, combined with the skill sets, allows Tony Smith to be the A player and to lead as best as he can. When did Smith and Trzynski finish their best? When Tony Smith was here and Trzynski was here. What happened when Trzynski started to approach the level and borderline past Tony Smith? They didn't finish as well. And I think that is a mentality and a difference in skill sets and also approaches to the game, that whether or not they will admit it out loud and is actually something they think about, I think it is the key of what makes Richards and Smith so successful. And that's the only thing I'll talk about, the only team I'll talk about in my little spiel about the Open, because I think it is such a fascinating dynamic as a team, and I don't see it slowing down, because I think they've hit their groove and they're just going to keep on cruising.
That is such an interesting point, Trey. I didn't even think about that, but it is so true. And man, can I geek out on the psychology of all that? But we'll move it over to Anthony. Thoughts on doubles?
Yeah, that's a wild take, that Mark would essentially be selling on his best performance a little bit so that Tony feels warm and fuzzy and gives him the confidence. That's interesting.
Right. That's a real like cheesy way to put it, and not not the best way to put it. But I think there's some element to it.
For sure. Hey, guys, the skill level, we just keep seeing this skill level grow. I actually love the fact that the pros are further separating themselves from the advanced division. Check this out in one bracket I just noticed. 19 of the players out of bracket A shot a 10 PPR or better. That's absolutely insane, where 2 to 3 years ago, we might have 2 or 5 guys out of a bracket shooting a 10. 19 out of those players. I thought that was pretty interesting. Talking about Graham and Eric Davis a little bit as a doubles partner team, I think they're absolutely deadly. I mean, these boys have deep history in the game together that goes way back. We know at one point, Eric's game was way too aggressive, right? My guess is too aggressive for Jamie Graham. Otherwise, we might have seen those guys partner up after the breakup from Matt Guy, both sitting with fire at the same time when that breakup happened. But I think that Jamie Graham was like, I don't know if I could deal with that style of game. But we know Eric's game is different now. You know, what he calls this conservatively aggressive approach. I absolutely love that these guys as a partnership. And coincidentally, I thought this was interesting. They both finished the doubles bracket with the same exact DPR, a 0.76. And for anyone not familiar with that stat, it's a measure of how much you're outscoring your opponent on average per round. So they were equal there. And a 0.76 is actually crazy. That level of DPR, we saw Mark Richards throw a 0.8 as the number one DPR through a whole season. So a 7.6 through a tournament is crazy. And here's the interesting part. Jamie Graham pulled that 0.76 by basically throwing a 10. He was like a couple hundred shy of a 10. Eric Davis throws the same DPR with a 9.34. And why that's crazy is if you take that DPR off, he's pushing his opponents down into the mid-8s. And we know how good the talent is right now. Not only just the talent of statisticals, but the ability of everybody else scoring in traffic. And we typically in the past have seen players being able to push their opponents into the 8 because no one had a roll bag and no one was able to push tough through traffic. So just interesting how they approached the game differently, but ultimately ended up outscoring their opponents the same. Mason Trader and Cash Chamness taking out Sammy Soto and Gavin Cano from the left side is wild. They also took out Derek Holland and Alex Rawls, who both won their singles bracket the next day. Kind of begs the question a little bit, Meesh, who's the better trader? I mean, we're seeing Mason emerge right now, really throwing good bags in both singles and doubles. Spencer Fabinar and Ethan Farias continue to impress. An early loss to Ryan Hart and Chris Roybal, then went on a 7-win tear, cleaning out monster teams in the loser side of the bracket. Absolutely slaughtered the loser side, and some of the teams they went through were crazy. The final, Graham Davis versus Smith and Richards. So back-to-back for Smith and Richards as we head into the first signature. These boys, they actually looked really primed for the pro season. It's obviously showing up in wins, but they just look really good. Certainly living up to all of our top 10 power rankings. After the tough win, they had a tough win against Cody Henderson and Ethan Walker, where they were down 19-18. And we see that a lot in these runs where it's like that one game that you got through, that was the difference maker, and you were able to go on and win the championship. That was their game. After getting that tough win down 19-18, they steamrolled all the way to the ship. Both Graham and Davis were outscored in that final. Graham just struggled the most. You know, he was left, he was right, a lot of unforced errors. Meesh, I think Smith and Richards a well-deserved top seed going into the pro brackets, and they continue to be the team to beat for me.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right. We are going to get into who needs a win. So as I said, we are getting into the signature events coming up in just under a month. So we have one event left. Michigan is going to be very well attended. I don't have the list in front of me yet, but Michael Gonzalez said that it's going to be a big one. So we're going to get into it. Trey, who needs a win?
Oh, I'm not going to make some friends with this list. So
don't steal my who needs a win. I have a feeling you're going to steal.
You want to go one at a time? You want to go one at a time?
Yeah, we're going to go back and forth.
Yeah, let's go one at a time. Number one on my list. I'm going to go straight at the top for last year's rankings.
You're doing it. You're doing it to me.
I'm doing it to you. I got Jeremiah Ellis.
Okay, I'm good. We're good.
Jeremiah Ellis last year, he comes in, wins the MVP. This year, okay, at the very beginning of the season, played with Harbaugh. A couple meh finishes, but we just said it's fine. It's fine. It's Jeremiah Ellis. He's going to show up when it matters, and it's going to be fine. It matters. Okay, and so I am concerned. The finish this weekend was not good. When I say I tune into a broadcast and I watch 8 hours of it, and yes, maybe the 1 hour on each show I missed was the first hour, and I jump in a little bit later, and I don't see Jeremiah Ellis once all weekend, that's not good. I'm not talking about him not winning. There are people that could be there and finish. If he had come out and lost in the bracket final to Alex Rawls and lost 21-15, I don't care. That's fine. That's good enough, right? But when I don't see you at all weekend, and I can't even gauge the competitive, and then you pair him with Devin Harbaugh, who's also on my list. I'm going for two of them. Devin Harbaugh is on my list. Now, both of these guys in singles and doubles are not where they expected to be at this time of the year. I'm hitting the panic button. I am worried about these guys. They need to turn it around quickly. They can have a lackluster one or two signature event performance, but I don't think turning it around is going to be a snap of the finger by the time the second half of the season comes around. So, yeah, first on my list, Jeremiah Ellis and Devin Harbaugh.
All right, Anthony.
Yeah, I like that. Meesh, do you think there might be something psychologically to I came out my first year, I did everything I said I was going to do. I did everything that people expected me to do who were from my camp. Mm-hmm. The second year, I don't need to do it again. Do you think there could be something to that psychologically for Ellis?
Well, there's no chance that he's consciously saying that. Like, he definitely is the type of person that's saying, I want to be the best. I always want to be the best. I want to be number one. So I guarantee if he was going through his goals for season 2, it's like, I want to do it again. subconsciously, when you hit a goal, do you take your foot off the gas a little bit if you're not super conscious of that subtle change? I think so.
Okay. Mine is going to be needing a win. I'll just do a singles one. I got a doubles one too. I'll just go singles first. Ryan Trader needs a win.
He was on my list.
Yeah, he came out hot at the start of the Open season. He won Open 2. Then he won back-to-back brackets at 3 and 4, and then again at 6. That takes us into the beginning of January. So we're 2+ months ago. Since then, pretty much downhill. Jake Brannon mentioned it. I don't remember if it was a podcast or even on the stream court. He said the S word. He's like, he's in a bit of a slump. Like, I hate to say it. Guys, 25th this past weekend. Losing to Devin Keane and Connor Heiser. Yes, we've seen one or two of those names before, but these are matches that a guy who was top 10, he was threatening the number 1 position last year at one point, where if he got a win and, Ellis got a not so good finish, he was going to take over the number 1 spot. That's the kind of player we're talking about. He finished 9th in the Illinois State Championship. This is a state championship where he would have been the favorite going into that. And then dead last in the bracket at Open number 7, losing to Kenny Tackett and Stacy Campbell. I get losses, and I look at who you lost to in these 4 cases. Yeah, we've seen Kenny Tackett's name before, but you're Ryan Trader. None of these guys should be able to be even close to you. So Ryan Trader needs a win.
He doesn't. I don't think it helps that his brother's peaking either. I don't think that's a good place to be. All right, Trey, who you got?
All right. I'm going to read a list for you. Okay. These aren't the people that I'm talking about here, but I think you'll notice a trend. Soto, Aiken, Dupler, Gore, Trader, Chamness. Okay.
Kids.
If I didn't give you a context for that and you wrote a title for that, you might say top X under 18 players in the world. Okay.
Yes.
Where's Braden Wilson?
Where is Braden Wilson? That's a good call.
I have yet to see Braden Wilson have a strong finish. And we did this exact same exercise about a month and a half ago. And I sat here and I said, who needs a win? AJ Sims and Braden Wilson. Guess what AJ Sims did this weekend? AJ Sims put on a clinic. Now, he didn't win, but there was no doubt to anybody in the building that one bag goes here, one bag goes there. We're talking about AJ Sims being the champion of the weekend, or at least a bracket win, a finish, whatever it may be. He looked really, really good. I have yet to see really any strong performance from Braden Wilson this season. I know he's a U18 player, but he's a professional cornhole player. He's held to a different standard, right? So for me, I am worried about it. He needs a win, especially as we get through the last Open, as we get into the signatures.
Anthony?
Yeah, it's a good one. And if we rewind to last year, it just kind of felt like he was always in the mix at the end in every single format type, singles, doubles. So yeah, that is a good one. All right, for my doubles, need a win. I'm going to go with Devin Harbaugh and Jeremiah Ellis. We're not talking about, do we need a win to be top 15, 20? These guys, that's not that kind of team. These are guys who can be the best in the world. So I think that they need a win. If we look at their best finish this season, it's a bracket 5th at Open number 7 and another 5th this past weekend. I would get it if it was the start of the season, but we're headed into that first pro signature in 3 weeks. We got Ellis, the best player in the world last year, MVP, paired up with the 6th best player last season, Devin Harbaugh. The guy's a legend. They can't even make a loser's bracket final. I think they need something to know that they're successful. I think it's more of a mental thing. I will throw in that, that they're not matching bags in singles and doubles, but I think for a team like that, they can get over that and at least make a loser's final. I would even take a bracket final to kind of turn things around for them. A bracket win would be huge. They don't need to win the whole thing, but they just need something really deep going into that first signature series just to mentally say, okay, we got it. We got this thing figured out going into the signature series.
All right, Trey, you got one more?
I got my last one. And this is a different take and an interesting take, but I think it's Matt Guy. And not for the reason because I don't believe he is an incredible player, but I have to look at this through the eyes of Matt Guy right now. And we have been talking about a title race. And if you polled all of the cornhole community and said, in 3 years from now, who leads the ACL all-time title race? What percentage of people would say Matt Guy in that answer?
What percentage of people are over 50? That's your percentage.
I say that because I don't think Matt Guy is going to finish top 10 this season. I'm pretty confident in it. Matt Guy is an elite level player. Matt Guy is one of the best players in the world. That's not good enough for Matt Guy. Matt Guy wants to be in the conversation as the best player in the world right now. Yes, the GOAT, whatever. That's not the mentality he has. He has a mentality of, I want to win right now. He wants to stay in that conversation. You got to get a win, and it's got to be relatively soon.
I don't remember if it was this weekend or last weekend, but I saw a post where a guy was saying, I finished with the elusive 11 in a tournament. You can only go so high in this game, right? A 12 PPR, no one's ever going to do that. You're maxing yourself out at 11. You got to have something different when you get into the deep games. Sure, his first 5 matches, he's going to average an 11.5, and then he's going to run into an elite level blocker and roller, and then that's where he takes his L's. You got to figure out something, add a new dimension to your game to win the last 2 matches in a bracket.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Did you have any more, Anthony? Are you good?
We're good.
All right, cool. So we are going to move on. Like I said, we have a clip here from the professor himself from ACL Academy.
Oh.
So let's look at that.
So as a right-handed player, the bag is going to spin. Is this bag in camera right here, Meesh?
Yeah, you can see it.
The white one?
Yeah.
Okay. A right-handed bag is going to spin clockwise. Can you see the clockwise spin?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So if you're coming up the right side of the bag, I want you to see what happens with your opponent's bag as you're coming up the right side. So my bag is spinning like this. As I make contact, watch what happens to that bag. And I'm going to try and stay on the right side of it. But do you see what's happening, Meesh? That bag is actually getting pushed with me.
Yes.
You see how it's getting pushed to the hole? Now watch what happens when I do the same thing on the left side. So if you kind of see as the corner increases, watch what happens. You see the bag getting pulled? The bag actually gets pulled out of the way. So when you're outside arm, or excuse me, when you're coming up the right side of a bag, you gotta think in your mind, getting around this is going to be more difficult. This is actually a situation where you want to push bags. So let's say this was my bag. The right side, I'm going to be able to push this bag easier because that motion, that clockwise motion is actually pushing my bag to the hole. Now, in a situation where my opponent is here and I'm on the left side of the bag, this is a get around condition. So this is going to be easier for me to get around my opponent's bag because see how it pulls it? And as it pulls it, it gets me to the hole better. So let me come back now that that illustration is kind of understood. When would that apply? Let me set that up. Let's put our opponents. Okay. So my opponent throws a lane side block and I'm on the right side. This is a perfect time to pull your get around bag out as a right-hander. Why? Because what we were just saying, and our landing spot is going to be somewhere in this area. We actually don't want to be nose down. The more nose down we are, the more we're going to get underneath this bag and actually push it. The flatter you can be, the better. When you mock the angle of the board at the slow-mo level, try it one time. Record your bag slow-mo right on the board. If you can land the bag perfectly flat, your bag actually has this instant where it lifts and it's no longer touching the board. There is a moment, if you think about a basketball, I mean, when it hits the ground, the ball is going to come up. All these resin beads in here, as they all hit the board, they all want to, equal and opposite reaction kind of thing. They all go up. So for a split moment, the bag lifts. Why that's nice is as your bag is in this, we'll just say it's weightless, right? Like the 1 pound bag is now 0 pounds on the board. It's super easy for it to get around this bag with that same motion I was telling you about, because as it comes in clockwise, it's going to pull that bag out of the way and work your way out. So level 1, level 2, level 3 even, lane side, think get around for your right-handed players. Now, if we reversed it, let's say blue's on this side, it doesn't work as easy coming around the right side because, again, you're going to be, even if I'm trying to stay right, it's going to want to grab that bag and bring it to the hole with you. And this is where that lift condition really comes into play if you can get that bag to do.
All right, there you go. So that's just less than 4 minutes of that 60-minute talk that Anthony did. I'll let you guys talk about it in a second, but you can head to academyacl.com to get the rest of that. But Trey, what do you think?
Yeah, I love it. It's great stuff, Anthony. And it's something that a lot of people don't think about is how they attack it and spin. The one thing I'd add to that, and maybe you talked about in this, is too that the next step I think of that conversation has got to be around bag spin rate, right? Because the amount and how much your bag is spinning is also going to affect how it mimics there. One of my favorite players that I've seen do this that is able to melt around bags and also it doesn't seem natural for them to do so because they're a left-handed player is Mark Richards. One thing I think has made Mark Richards so successful is that he's got the perfect amount of spin so that when he does melt around that bag, it is actually a natural, when you talk about RPM, that natural RPM is the same in which he kind of matches what you were kind of illustrating. Whereas if you have a player that spins it really fast, that bag is going to spin so fast, a second corner is going to come by and catch it, and it kills a lot of the momentum very quickly as it tries to go around a bag if you're throwing a very flat bag. So super insightful, and people, as they get more and more into the game, they realize all these different levels and in-depth things. And I think that's what's so great about ACL Academy is that, we're going to spend even just 6-7 minutes talking about it here, but when you really dive into an hour-long session, you can really open people's eyes to where, I have been stepping out like this my whole career playing, when really I don't need to. I think your illustration of that right side lane is perfect, right? You don't need to try anything to try to get really around it. If you throw a normal straight bag, it's really not going to get kicked that much. You can stay in the center and just hug that bag as a right-handed player. So really good job. Super insightful and something that if people are looking to get better at cornhole, they should be watching videos like this.
Yeah, and when we talk about the speed control game, that's really where we see a lot of this side-by-side work. When you're working up the right or left-hand side, you don't necessarily need to reach the hole on that bag, but taking over hole control with the get around or the right side is huge in this game. This is where we see players score big. I think this is why, though, the roll bag is becoming so popular because, if we rewind four years ago, we were all playing in that 2D plane. We were playing on the board. But now we're introducing this Z-axis of the space above the board. And with the roll bag, you're almost taking out all of the thought process. It's very similar to an airmail, right? You could throw an airmail, 100% airmails. You never really need to think much in the game because you're doing one thing. It doesn't matter what blocks there are. With the rolls, we're seeing the same thing. A block's laid, your thought process doesn't change. I'm going to throw my roll bag. I'm going to go over it. It could be left side, right side. We'll see players kind of work angles a little bit just to control their left to right, depending on how sticky the boards are. We see players looking for the V shape of bags because it provides ramps and they want to hit those spots to improve the percentage of hitting the roll bags. But when you can go in that Z direction, it takes away a lot of the thought process in the game.
And I also think that that's introducing when people rely too heavily on the roll bag in situations where the hole gets a lot of clutter in front, a lot of bags in front. I think that's where you're seeing some people will actually take a step back a little bit, right? The true masters of the game, yes, they do have that roll bag. But if I look at someone like an Alex Rawls or a Mark Richards, not only do they have this roll bag, not only do they have the airmail, but they do have those certain shots where they just use the plane of the board. They're just getting around something just to take over position. You still have to have it part of your game. You can't just default to throwing a roll bag in every situation because there will be times when you get in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And I cut off the clip when I was bringing it over here, but right after Anthony talked about that, two people who were there live were able to directly interact with him and ask their questions. And Anthony was asking them, what would you do here? So not just the ability to watch the videos, but the ability to interact with our experts is really, really fun. And I just sit back and watch it happen. So it's fun. It's fun to facilitate. So academyacl.com. You can find all the information there. All right, let's get into Overreaction Wednesday. All right, let's start with you, Trey. Logan Chamberlain is the best player out of Texas.
Second best player out of Texas. Okay. The best player out of Texas is Sammy Soto. Sammy Soto. So, yeah,
So
I just think
overreaction?
that's an overreaction. But he's close. I mean, I don't think it's that egregious to say. I just think Soto has been too consistent. Chamberlain, hey, keep throwing the way you're throwing. I'm happy to make that change, but I'll put him at number 2 right now. But I'll put him ahead of Gavin Cano, and I don't think Anthony likes that, but I will.
Anthony?
I do like it. I do like it. Hey, they just had a head-to-head, guys. I did talk to Gavin a little bit. These guys practice against each other constantly, and they trade off. It's a 50-50 thing. But
that was my question on the feed. What's their record against each other?
It's dead split. So I was talking to Connor. He's like, man, we are so close. It's crazy. So good for Chamberlain to get the one that mattered in the championship match and just smoked it. And if you look at the match, though, it was a tough. There was a reverse cut collect right out of the gate, like round 3 that he went off the bat, gave up a 5. So then all of a sudden he's in panic mode. One airmail cost him 7 points. So he's down 12-0 in the very beginning, and then he's playing catch up. So that game was a little bit weird, but I agree with Trey. Soto's got to be the best player out of Texas right now.
All right, so overreaction. It's a consensus.
Overreaction.
There's concern that Jeremiah Ellis will end the season outside of the top 10. Trey,
not an overreaction. I'm nervous. Yeah, I don't really have much analysis besides I'm nervous.
Anthony?
There's nothing that says otherwise. We have to rewind 8 months ago before we find some data point that says that recency, what he's done in the last seven months or so, not an overreaction.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say about it is when I was looking, to what I wanted to put here, looking back at his history, he's throwing really well. I guess for me, I'm like, well, it's not like he's throwing low PPRs all
Everyone's getting better.
Yeah.
Everyone's getting better. You got to keep up.
That's the problem. We're confident at least one signature win will go to a junior elite player.
That's tough.
That's hard. So again, we're going to who's our list, right?
There you go.
Mason Trader, Cash Chandness, Zach Aiken is probably your 3.
Jackson Gore biggest. On the back of Jackson Gore.
Well, he's a pro.
Okay. We're talking.
Yeah, they're talking like junior pro players, not just pro players.
Because they have a harder path to get to the end. So if you look at these elite juniors.
Yeah, good clarification.
Man, if I'm thinking about it this much, it can't be an overreaction, right? So I don't know. I'm gonna give the worst answer, whatever. I don't think it's an overreaction. I'm not committed to them winning, but I don't think it's this crazy hot take that is so egregious that we should even be considering it.
Okay, what if you just focus on the word confident?
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go. I was like, the confident word's killing it for me. You take the Gores out of it, it's an overreaction.
Okay, Anthony says overreaction. Because I think that's the difference between this and buy or sell, right? We're talking about like an emotional, like a feeling, right? Like confidence. Are we confident in that? We'll see. All right. Everyone should fear Steve Schrader in the senior events.
I don't think it's an overreaction at all. I mean, I even just a month ago we were talking about how where's Frank Modlin been? Where's Damon Dennis been? Right, 2 of the senior players that should be leading this division, right, and should be finishing at the top. Steve Schrader said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." So he jumps in and says, "I'll take care of it, guys. I'll be the head of it." So shout out Steve Schrader. No, it's his crown. Let him keep
it. Anthony.
Yeah, not an overreaction. And we saw this coming a couple years ago. It reminds me with Wally, myself, we would kick off the pro weekend with singles, every single event a couple years ago. Steve was always there. And this is when Damon Dennis was peaking higher and Frank Modlin was at the top. So we've seen him coming, not an overreaction.
Gavin Cano has a mental block at the end of brackets.
I still think it's there. I'm gonna say not an overreaction. Like I'll put it this way. I don't see Gavin as much. okay, when I see him, it's at the end of tournaments. Sometimes I say to myself, is Gavin Cano really a top 10, top 5 player in the world? The answer is yes, he is. But the fact that I'm asking myself that question tells me I'm not getting his best. Anthony just told me he plays Logan Chamberlain all the time, and they split 50-50. Then they get on one of the biggest stages in the sport, and Logan beats him 21-0. I mean, there's something there. I'm not ready to say that he can't finish. I'm just saying that there's something there. Not an overreaction.
Anthony?
That last piece was a really good argument. That is a really good argument. I'm actually
going to occasionally.
I'm going to say it's an overreaction. I followed Kano last season through an entire bracket at one of the nationals. I really love his preparation from match to match. What he does in between matches, it's all to support the mental toughness, how he comes off of big wins. And he's a guy that's not celebrating too early. And then in between matches, he's really focused on the next thing. You don't see him kind of wandering around doing crazy stuff. He's really in the game. I talked about that game against Chamberlain. It was just a weird start, and then he kind of had to dig his way out. And if we look at his last few matches, I mean, he smacked Alex Rawls in the first playoff round to get to that match. I think it's an overreaction. I really like his preparation. It was just an unfortunate ending, and his time's going to come. This guy's going to be at the top.
And I'll say that only applies to singles. I think him and Sammy have a different dynamic, and I think they're a dominant, really, really good team in that regard.
Sure.
For sure.
All right, last one. Winthrop players are spending too much time at ACL HQ and getting too good.
Get him the hell out of my office space. I mean, it's like trying to take a call at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I got these jokers over here making faces. And Josh Quinn's a weird dude. He's a funny dude, but he's a weird dude, all right? So, not an overreaction.
Anthony?
Do you think there's anything I feel like the HQ conditions are always super, super sticky. Do you think constantly playing in there helps, or is it disadvantage going into other?
No, I think
venues?
it is, because it makes all the hard shot selections that much harder, so that when you get them in game time, it's easier to execute. The thing what they'll struggle is if they get in a situation where they got to run bags constantly, that will hurt them sometimes based on their ability. And so sometimes that hurts their ultimate upside. But they get in a dirty situation in a dirty game. I mean, they're amped and they're ready to go.
All right, you guys ready for hot takes? Trey, you're first.
I'm a little bit worried about what I saw from Cheyenne in doubles. But I was really impressed with what I saw for her in singles. She threw it 11-5 over 33 rounds. Jordan Powers throwing 11 plus here. I think Cheyenne, Bubenheim, and Jordan Power win a signature event. And I think that's going to be I think they'll have some ones where they don't finish well. There's going to have a high up, high down. But I think they're going to put it all together for one event, and they're going to win one. And it's going to be a surprise to people. That's
hot. Anthony?
Mish, keep the receipt on that one. That one is scolding hot.
Filed away.
Hey, when this partnership was announced, if we said that they were going to win a signature event, it would be the coldest take ever. But right now, it's a hot take. Devin Harbaugh and Jeremiah Ellis win a signature series bracket at this first one coming up. They're going to win a bracket in 3 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. That is high. It shouldn't be, but it is. That's where we're at. Mine's going to piggyback off what you guys talked about earlier. I do think Logan Chamberlain is the #1 player out of Texas. That's why I wrote it. I think Sammy Soto is really impressive, but there are some things I've noticed that I feel like Logan excels at. So I'm going to put Logan as #1 in Texas. That's my hot take. All right, that's all we got time for, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you all next time.